Barbara Corcoran, founder of the Corcoran Group, was fired and broke, but she turned it all around and made millions. Here's how she did it. At 23, Barbara worked as a secretary, barely making ends meet. One day, her boss fired her, saying she lacked the skills to succeed. She was crushed with only $1,000 left to her name. But instead of letting that failure defeat her, Barbara took that money and risked it all on real estate. She started the Corcoran Group, but things were far from easy. She faced rejection after rejection, slept on friends' couches, and couldn't even afford a car. So she had to borrow rides from others just to show properties. Despite all the struggles, Barbara never gave up. Her persistence paid off, and she turned her small business into one of the most successful real estate companies. She sold the Corcoran Group for $66 million. Barbara was fired, broke, and told she'd never make it. But she didn't quit. What's stopping you? If she can do it, so can you. If you've been here before, drop a hashtag Believe in the comments below so I can feature you here in a future video. And if you're new, welcome to Believe Nation, the only channel that helps you believe in yourself daily, one video at a time. Believe. Early struggles. Barbara grew up in a poor New Jersey family as one of 10 children. She struggled in school. She even jokes that getting straight D's was an achievement for her. Teachers labeled her the dumb kid, and she battled undiagnosed dyslexia, which made her feel insecure about her smarts. Now, despite this, Barbara had street smarts and a pretty tenacious spirit. By the time she was 23 years old, she had already worked over 20 different jobs, everything from selling hot dogs to being a waitress, and had been fired from several of them. These early failures, they could have crushed her confidence, but instead, they actually lit a fire inside of her. Failure is what I'm best at, Barbara has said, because every time she failed, it motivated her to push harder. Now, she was tired of bosses telling her what to do and wanted to take control of her own future. So at 23, Barbara was working as a low-paid secretary, barely scraping by. One day, even that job fell apart. Her boss fired her, implying she didn't have what it takes to succeed. Barbara was crushed at that time, and at that moment, she had roughly $1,000 to her name. It seemed like life was telling her she wasn't good enough. Yet this disappointment turned out to be a turning point for her. Instead of letting that failure stop her, Barbara decided to bet everything on herself. It turns out she wasn't alone. 1 in 4 entrepreneurs fail at least once before succeeding, according to a survey. In other words, early failure is actually pretty common on that road to success. What made Barbara different was that she didn't quit. She took that last $1,000 and made a daring move that would change her life. Taking a chance on real estate. In the early 1970s, Barbara was waitressing at a diner when fate walked in. She met an older customer named Ramon Ray Simon, who was a small-time real estate developer. Ray was charmed by Barbara's people skills and saw potential in her. He suggested she try real estate, telling her that with her personality, she'd be great at it. Before she knew, Ray offered to loan her $1,000 to start a real estate company together, an opportunity Barbara couldn't refuse. She had nothing to lose. In 1973, at 23 years old, Barbara and her new partner founded a tiny real estate office in New York City, initially called Corcoran Simone. Ray took a 51% ownership since he put up the money, and Barbara held 49%, working as an eager new real estate agent in Manhattan. Barbara dove in head first. In the beginning, she focused on renting apartments, small deals that earned small commissions. She was green in the business, but she learned fast by actually doing. In fact, one of her first big breaks came by chance. An engineer from out of town mentioned he wanted to buy an apartment, not just rent. Barbara had no properties to sell him, but she didn't let that stop her. She confidently walked him all around the city until amazingly, he did find an apartment to buy. The sale price was about $50,000 and Barbara's commission was $3,000, more than 10 times what she'd earned from a typical rental deal. This lucky sale opened her eyes. If a total newbie like her could sell a home by sheer hustle, what else could she do? Barbara realized sales were the way to go. The very next day, she started shifting her company's focus from rentals to sales, even hiring her first sales agent to help. Now, money was still extremely tight in those early years. Barbara wasn't drawing a big salary. Every dollar went back into growing the business. She came up with a scrappy system to expand. In 1970s, a short 3-line real estate ad in the New York Times cost about $180, which was a lot of money for her tiny startup. So Barbara set a rule for herself. Whenever she had at least $180 in fees coming in, she'd reinvest it by taking out another ad and hire another agent to join the firm. If you could pay for an ad with a new agent's name on it, the agent was happy, she said, and her company would grow a little more each time. So by reinvesting every bit of cash back into the business, Barbara slowly built up her brokerage. Now, she still operated super lean. Legend has it she sometimes even slept on friends' couches because she couldn't afford her own place. And she didn't own a car, so she would bum rides to take clients to see properties. This was bootstrap entrepreneurship at its finest. Barbara was willing to endure any inconvenience if it meant that her young business could survive another day. And it started to pay off. Over the next few years, Barbara's hustle and clever marketing began to make a name for her little firm. By 1978, the Corcoran Simone company had 14 agents and about $560,000 in annual revenue. A decent-sized operation for a business that started with one room and $1,000. It looked like Barbara was on her way, but she had no idea that her biggest test was right around the corner. Also, if you want to take real action after this video, I made a free worksheet just for you. It covers the top lessons from today, gives you space to write your biggest takeaways, and helps you build a simple action plan. It's 100% free. Just click the link in the description to go grab it. I'll see you there. Heartbreak and turning point. In 1978, just as the real estate business was gaining momentum, Barbara's personal and professional world was shattered. Out of the blue, her partner Ray, also her boyfriend of 7 years by then, announced he was leaving her. Even worse, he said he was going to marry her secretary. The news hit Barbara like a punch to the gut. Not only was she heartbroken emotionally, but suddenly her business partnership was in jeopardy too. They had to break up the company and divide everything they had built together. Barbara later admitted this was the hardest time of her life. She packed up her belongings and moved out within hours of hearing the news, too hurt to stay any longer. When they sat down to split the business, they did it civilly, almost like drafting players for two new sports teams. Ray got to pick the first agent to keep for his new firm. Not surprisingly, he chose the secretary he was marrying, and then Barbara picked the next agent for hers, and so on. And in the end, they each wound up with half the agents. Barbara took 7 of the salespeople, and they split the meager $37,000 in cash the company had. It was literally a 50-50 break. Barbara was left with a tiny operation once again, and no partner. On her way out the door, Ray decided to hit her with one final blow. "You'll never succeed without me," he told her. That sentence seared into Barbara's memory. "Those words branded my soul," she said later. It was the ultimate insult, one that she could have believed in her vulnerable state. Now, for a moment, Barbara felt as if her confidence was completely gone. She thought she was nothing without Ray. But instead of breaking her, Ray's cutting remark ignited Barbara's fighting spirit. "It just hit me in the gut," she recalled, "and I felt that fever in my body like I'll be damned if you ever see me not succeed." So in that moment, Barbara made a private vow. He would never get to see her fail. She would prove that she could make it on her own no matter what. That heartbreak and betrayal, as painful as it was, became her motivation to push for an even bigger success. Barbara didn't waste any time either. Just a few days after the breakup in 1978, the 29-year-old entrepreneur picked herself up and opened her own firm, which she called the Corkran Group. She even chose an office space a few floors above her ex-partner's office, a cheeky psychological win there. Every morning, she'd step into the elevator with Ray and his new wife, then smile and say, "Sorry, I'm going up," as she rode up to the higher floor. Stupid ego lift? Maybe. But for Barbara, that little victory gave her the confidence boost that she needed. She was determined to show she could thrive on her own. And listen, sure enough, once Barbara was running her own show, she did not miss a beat. In her first year as an independent business owner, she had 7 agents and pulled in about $350,000 in revenue. It wasn't quite the scale of the old company yet, but it proved that Barbara could succeed without Ray, and in fact, she was just getting started. It was in the late 1970s, and New York City's real estate market was tough, especially for a young woman entrepreneur. At that time, there were virtually no female-owned real estate firms in the city. Women did the legwork as agents, but almost all the firm owners were men. So Barbara stepped into this boys' club, determined to stand out and carve her place. She wore bright red suits and short skirts as her trademark look, anything to ensure that while she might not be welcomed by the old guard, she would be noticed. She refused to let anyone talk down to her or dismiss her. If a man ever tried to bully her in business, Barbara would quietly say to herself, "Forget you," in nice polite words, and double down to prove him wrong. She had learned early in life from watching her father belittle her mother that she would never let a man intimidate her. Now, in the cutthroat real estate world, that resolve became one of her greatest assets. Rebuilding and rising to the top. With her heartache behind her and a chip on her shoulder, Barbara built the Corcoran Group from a tiny 7-person outfit into a real estate powerhouse. She treated her new team like family, fostering a culture of loyalty and fun. For example, she couldn't afford fancy holiday parties, so she'd throw legendary February Christmas parties when venues were cheaper. And she surprised her stressed agents with free massages at their desk. She made sure her people felt loved, and in return, they went the extra mile for the company. Barbara was scrappy and savvy every step of the way. That's not to say it was all smooth sailing. In fact, a few years after the breakup, Barbara faced another major crisis. In 1980, a real estate downturn left her young company in a cash flow crunch. Business had slowed and bills piled up. Barbara found herself $10,000 short of what she needed to keep the company afloat. Desperate, she made a decision that could have changed everything. She almost sold 50% of her business to an investor just to raise that $10,000 and survive. She shook hands on a deal with a French businessman who had helped her with some deals, effectively valuing her sweat and blood enterprise at only $20,000. It was a low moment. She was willing to give up half her dream for a simple cash lifeline. But in a twist of fate, the deal fell through. The gentleman changed his mind at the last minute. And at first, Barbara was devastated, thinking she might go bankrupt. Yet just a couple of months later, the real estate market turned back in her favor and business picked up again. She managed to hang on without selling out. It was a profound lesson. Sometimes the darkest moments come right before a big break. Barbara realized that if you can just hold on a little longer, the situation can improve. And it's no wonder 36% of entrepreneurs say they've considered quitting during tough times. But the ones who make it are those who keep going. As the 1980s and 90s rolled on, Barbara Corcoran became a force in New York City real estate. She constantly looked for ways to outsmart the competition. In the pre-internet days, she created the Corkran Report. It was a simple newsletter that compiled average apartment sales prices in New York City. And this little report turned Barbara into a quoted expert in the media and brought invaluable publicity to her firm. She also wasn't afraid to try new marketing ideas, even if they failed. In one bold move, she spent her entire first year's profit, around $77,000, on producing video home tours on VHS tapes, hoping to give buyers a way to see apartments without traveling. That idea flopped. Most people weren't ready for it, and her agents never handed out the VHS tapes. Barbara felt she had egg on her face after that failure, but she didn't sulk in it for long. Over dinner one night, her new husband, Bill, whom she married in 1988, mentioned something he saw in the military. A network called the Internet. A light bulb went off in Barbara's head. She realized her video tour idea wasn't wrong. She was just a few years too early. So she rushed to register Corcoran Group's website and started putting those property videos online. By 1993, Barbara's firm was selling real estate on the Internet 2 years before any of her competitors caught on. In fact, she cleverly registered the domain names of her big rivals as well, so that eventually they'd have to call her to get their own web addresses. It was a cheeky move to gauge when they were finally embracing the future. So that kind of forward thinking kept the Corcoran Group ahead of the curve. And year by year, Barbara's one-woman startup grew into a giant. She started as just a young woman with a dream and a $1,000 loan, and over time she became, as one description put it, the queen of New York real estate. She had indeed fulfilled the vision she had at 23 to make her name known. And the numbers tell the story. Barbara took that tiny business and expanded it to 800 employees, generating over $4 billion in yearly sales. Her company became one of the largest and most successful real estate brokerages in the city. And remember, this was in an era, just a couple decades earlier, where women weren't even allowed to have a business loan without a male cosign. Barbara had shattered glass ceilings on her way up. Finally, in 2001, after 28 years of grinding and growing, Barbara decided it was time to cash out and take on new challenges. So in a triumphant deal, she sold the Corcoran Group for $66 million. And ever superstitious, Barbara insisted on the price. 66 is her lucky number, and she got exactly what she wanted. The waitress who once struggled to pay her bills had become a multi-millionaire entrepreneur. She was 52 years old, financially secure, and had proven everyone who doubted her, from that boss who fired her to the ex who left her, completely wrong. Barbara Corcoran's journey from a fired secretary to real estate mogul really shows her resilience. She started with no money, no prestigious education, no connections, only a fiery determination to control her own destiny. She faced rejections and betrayals and plenty of failures along the way, but each time she chose to see failure not as the final end, but as the beginning of something new. Every single failure has an equally great upside if you're willing to stay in the game, Barbara says. Her life proves that. Being told you'll never succeed became the very reason she fought so hard to succeed. So be bold, take your shot, And when life knocks you down, remember to get back up and say, I'll be damned if you ever see me not succeed. And congratulations, you're one video closer to who you're meant to be. Believe. Now let's learn the incredible story of Coco Chanel. Coco Chanel, founder of Chanel, was abandoned at 12 and raised in an orphanage. No money, no connections, just a dream to revolutionize fashion. They told her a poor girl could never make it. She proved them all wrong. At 12 years old, Coco Chanel's world fell apart. Her mother died, and instead of caring for his children, her father walked away. She was sent to a convent orphanage where life was cold, strict, and lonely. The nuns taught her how to sew, but Chanel wanted more than a life of quiet obedience. She dreamed of freedom, of escaping the limits placed on women like her. At 18, she left with nothing but her sewing skills and raw determination. She worked as a seamstress by day and sang in smoky cafes at night, earning just enough to survive. That's where she became Coco. She started designing hats, simple, elegant, different, but no one believed a poor orphan girl could be a designer. She had no connections, no wealthy family name, just her vision. So she took a risk. She started her own shop. The early days were brutal. No investors, no luxury materials, just her working endlessly, hand-stitching each piece. People laughed at her designs. Where were the corsets, the lace? But women loved her bold, effortless style. One by one, they started buying. Word spread. Then came Chanel No. 5, a fragrance unlike anything before. It became a global sensation, and Chanel became a name the world would never forget. From an abandoned orphan with nothing to a fashion empire that still dominates today, Coco Chanel wasn't born into success. She created it. She refused to let her past define her. Where you start doesn't matter. It's what you do next that counts. Coco Chanel, from orphan to fashion icon. They told her a poor girl could never make it. Gabrielle Coco Chanel proved them all wrong. Abandoned at 12 and raised in a convent orphanage with nothing to her name, she would rise to revolutionize women's fashion. No money, no connections, just the vision and determination. This is the incredible true story of how Coco Chanel transformed herself from a destitute orphan into a legendary designer whose name is now synonymous with luxury and style. Early life of Gabrielle Chanel, poverty and ambition. Coco Chanel did not come from wealth or privilege, far from it. She was born Gabrielle Bonheur Chanel in 1883 to a laundrywoman and street vendor. After her mother died of tuberculosis in 1895, Chanel's father abandoned his children. 11-year-old Gabrielle was sent to a convent orphanage of Aubazine Abbey in rural France, and she never saw her father again. Life at the orphanage was strict and frugal, but it was here that Gabrielle learned to sew under the tutelage of the nuns, a humble skill that would become the foundation of her future empire. Despite the harshness of her childhood, young Gabrielle refused to let misfortune define her. Years later, she would famously say, "My life didn't please me, so I created my life." This bold credo was already taking shape in the orphanage. Dressed in the orphanage's plain black and white uniforms, Gabrielle absorbed influences that would later surface in her designs. The simplicity of black and white ensembles and even the interlocking CC logo of Chanel, which legend says was inspired by the geometric pattern of the Abbey's stained glass windows. At 18, too old to remain at Aubazine, she struck out on her own, leaving the orphanage with nothing but her sewing skills, a head full of dreams and determination. Finding a voice, from seamstress to Coco. Gabrielle spent her early adult years struggling to find the direction. She found work as a seamstress by day, and by night she attempted to reinvent herself as a singer in cabarets and cafes. Performing in dimly lit music halls for French cavalry officers, she earned a meager living, just coins tossed into a past hat. On stage, she usually sang a little ditty called "Who Has Seen Coco?" and before long, the nickname Coco stuck. She later claimed her father affectionately called her Coco, though there's no evidence of that. The singing career never took off though. Her voice was only average, but Coco's time as an entertainer gave her something arguably more valuable than fame, a persona and a network. The petite brunette with the juvenile allure charmed the uniformed gentleman in the audience, and she learned how to present herself with confidence. Coco Chanel was beginning to emerge. Ever practical, Coco later heeded her own advice. Don't spend time beating on a wall, hoping to transform it into a door. Performing wasn't opening doors for her, so she decided to pivot to something she was truly skilled at: fashion. By her early 20s, Chanel had begun to dream of designing hats and clothes. Around 1906, she befriended Etienne Balsan, a wealthy ex-cavalry officer, and became his companion. Living among the French elite in Balsan's chateau, Chanel was exposed to the lavish lifestyles of the rich. But instead of just reveling in luxury, she observed and learned. She started designing hats as a hobby while living at Balsan's estate, trimming and embellishing them in novel, pared-down ways that reflected her own fresh sense of style. This hobby would soon evolve into her entryway to the fashion business. Building the House of Chanel, the first shop. In 1910, at age 27, Coco Chanel took a daring step for a woman of her time. She opened her own tiny shop in Paris. With financial help from another admirer, the English polo player Arthur Boyd Capel, she established a boutique at 21 Rue Cambon called Chanel Mode, selling the hats she so loved to design. It was an audacious move. She had no formal training, no famous family name, and Paris's fashion scene was ruled by established designers. In those early days, business was slow and resources were not available. Chanel reportedly had to work endlessly, hand-stitching each hat herself. People in high society laughed at the idea of a penniless orphan girl calling herself a designer. But Coco's hats were simple, elegant, and unlike the overly styled hats the women were used to. Her minimalist approach soon caught the attention of influential French actresses who began wearing Chanel's hats on stage and in public. This patronage gave Chanel's brand the first spark of publicity that it needed. As her hat shop reputation continued to grow, Chanel's ambitions expanded. She opened a second boutique in 1913 in the resort town of Deauville, Normandy, and there she debuted casual resort wear for women. Lacking the funds to buy expensive fabrics, Coco turned a limitation into an innovation. She used humble jersey fabric, then used mainly for men's underwear, to create stylish, sporty garments for women. The comfort and ease of these jersey dresses and sailor tops were a revelation. Women, especially the fashionable set Vacation by the Sea, fell in love with Chanel's relaxed but chic designs. By 1915, she'd opened yet another shop in Biarritz catering to well-heeled Europeans waiting out the First World War, and that shop did so well it enabled Chanel to pay back Boyd Capel's original investment by 1916. Chanel was now a rising star in fashion. Breaking fashion norms. Poor girl chic. Chanel's early designs were more than just new clothes. They were a rebellion against the stuffy fashion norms of the day. In the Edwardian era and into the 1910s, fashionable women were expected to wear corsets, layers of petticoats, and ornate frills. Coco Chanel did the unthinkable. She banished the corset and bobbed her hair. She offered clothes that prioritized comfort, movement, and understated elegance over rigid formalities. Her silhouettes were simple and straight, often inspired by menswear and the practical uniform she'd seen in the past. This was completely new territory, and at first many observers were shocked. One famous anecdote tells us of the celebrated designer Paul Poiret, known for his extravagant styles, encountering Chanel dressed in a plain black outfit. "For whom, madame, do you mourn?" he asked mockingly, suggesting her all-black attire looked like mourning clothes. "For you, monsieur," Chanel snapped back. In her trademark wit, she signaled that the old-fashioned order, represented by Poiret, was on its way out and a new era had begun. Chanel's confidence proved justified. By the end of World War I, women were ready for a fashion revolution. Harper's Bazaar declared in 1915 that any woman who didn't have a Chanel creation was hopelessly out of fashion. The ornate corseted look was dying, and Chanel's relaxed yet refined style was ascendant, fitting the needs of modern women stepping into more active roles in society. Chanel herself had become a symbol of the new liberated woman. She wore trousers, she drove her own car, and she socialized with artists and aristocrats alike. By 1918, she was successful enough to acquire an entire building at 31 Rue Cambon in Paris, which would become the famous Chanel Couture House. From a poorhouse orphanage to a townhouse in the most fashionable part of Paris, the transformation was complete. Or so it seemed. Throughout the 1920s, Coco Chanel reigned as one of Paris's premier couture houses. She had hit her stride, designing groundbreaking clothing that defined an era. But perhaps her most legendary contribution of that decade was the invention of the little black dress. In 1926, American Vogue published a drawing of a simple black dress by Chanel, calf-length with clean lines, and dubbed it Chanel's Ford, likening it to the Model T for its universality. In a time when black was mostly reserved for mourning, Chanel made it chic. The little black dress was affordable, accessible, and elegant, a symbol of modern women's taste. Suddenly, every woman of style wanted a simple black Chanel dress in her closet. As Vogue predicted, the LBD became a timeless staple, the go-to uniform for women of taste around the world. The Chanel empire beyond clothing. By the late 1920s, Chanel's fashion house was a booming enterprise. She had expanded beyond clothing into jewelry and accessories and would soon leave perhaps her biggest mark on the world of luxury, fragrance. In 1921, with the help of perfumer Ernest Beau, Coco developed a perfume that was radically different from the norm. Instead of the typical single flower scents of the time, this new fragrance was a complex blend of notes, a perfume. Chanel says that smells like a woman, not a rose. She named it Chanel No. 5, choosing the 5th sample presented to her, which also happened to be her lucky number. Chanel No. 5 was launched and quickly became the fragrance sensation. It was light, fresh, and mysteriously alluring, and its sleek minimalist bottle stood out from the ornate perfume bottles of the other brands. Chanel No. 5 became the most famous perfume in the world, an icon of its own right. Years later, when Marilyn Monroe was asked what she wore to bed, her coy answer was, just a few drops of Chanel No. 5. Only adding to the legend. Chanel's business acumen shone through in how she marketed No. 5 and her fashion to the rich and famous. She rubbed shoulders with British aristocracy and Hollywood stars alike. She even designed costumes for films in the 1930s and counted the likes of actress Marlene Dietrich and artist Salvador Dali among her friends. By 1935, Chanel's empire reportedly employed some 4,000 people and was worth millions. She was not just a designer, she was a powerful businesswoman and household name. In 1931, she traveled to Hollywood at the invitation of producer Samuel Goldwyn to dress movie stars, a testament to her growing international reputation. Coco Chanel had come a long way from a girl who once sewed in a convent and sang for coins in dingy cafes. Trials of war and a triumphant comeback. As soaring as Chanel's success was, history intervened. In 1939, with the outbreak of World War II, Chanel made the difficult decision to close her couture house. Paris was under threat and luxury fashion was low on the world's priorities. She kept only her jewelry and perfume business. The sales of Chanel No. 5 kept money coming in and famously took up residence in the Hotel Ritz. During the war years, Chanel's life grew more complicated and controversial, including accusations of collaboration with the occupying German regime, which would later cast a shadow on her legacy. By the time the war ended in 1945, at over 60 years old, Coco Chanel found herself out of the fashion limelight and living in semi-exile in Switzerland. Many assumed she was done, a relic of a previous era. But Coco wasn't finished yet. In 1954, at the age of 70, she boldly decided to return to Paris and reopen the House of Chanel, declaring that she still had more to say in fashion. The world of couture had changed in her 15-year absence. Christian Dior's elaborate new look with its cinched waists and full skirts had dominated post-war fashion, and a new generation of designers was on the rise. When Chanel debuted her comeback collection, the initial reaction in Paris was harsh. The French press, still unforgiving about her wartime association and perhaps thinking her style old-fashioned, gave lukewarm reviews and even scathing critiques, noting her age and calling her designs outdated. Coco was, once again, the underdog. However, the American and British press saw things differently. They hailed her 1954 collection as a breakthrough that restored youthful freedom to women's clothes. Buyers from New York and London rushed to order her new suits and dresses, and gradually, public opinion shifted, and the very elements Chanel was criticized for, the pared-down classic tweed suits, the easy-to-wear cut of her jackets, became celebrated as genius. Chanel had effectively introduced the world to the now iconic Chanel suit, a chic collarless cardigan jacket and skirt, often trimmed with braid, paired with pearls and a camellia, an outfit that offered elegance and comfort. Women loved it. Once again, Coco Chanel had read the times and given women what they didn't even know they needed. Throughout the late 1950s and 1960s, Chanel remained a force in fashion. She worked nonstop. Some say she became tough and tyrannical in her later years, utterly devoted to perfection. Stars like Elizabeth Taylor and Grace Kelly and Jackie Kennedy wore Chanel creations, which further cemented the brand's prestige. Coco's personal style, the ever-present strings of pearls, the tweed suits, the two-tone ballet flats, became as legendary as the clothes she made for others. In 1971, Chanel passed away at the age of 87, still designing up until her final days. At her funeral in Paris, an abundance of white flowers, camellias, orchids, azaleas adorned the church, a final tribute to the woman who loved a simple palette of black and white. Legacy and impact. Coco Chanel's story is more than just a biography of a fashion designer. It's a story of a creative visionary who changed the way women live and dress. She has been credited with nothing less than the emancipation of women's fashion by introducing comfortable jersey dresses, slacks for women, hands-free shoulder bags, costume jewelry, and the notion that luxury could be subtle. Chanel liberated women from the bondage of corsets and the constraint of dressing for male approval. As early as 1915, magazines recognized that Chanel's rise signaled the death blow to the corseted silhouette, and that under her influence, the fussy feathers and frills of the past were gone. She replaced them with an effortless, sporty chic that endures to this day. We still wear Chanel's innovations, from the little black dress to bell-bottom pants, Breton striped shirts, and quilted handbags, in some form over a century later. Chanel's name also lives on as a global luxury brand. After her death, the house of Chanel did not wither away. Rather, it was rejuvenated under new creative leadership. Notably, designer Karl Lagerfeld took the reins in the 1980s and for more than 3 decades carried Chanel's legacy forward, reimagining the classic Chanel look for new generations. Today, the interlocking CC logo, which Coco herself sketched back in the 1920s, is recognized worldwide as a symbol of style and elegance. Also, Coco Chanel is the only fashion designer named on Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people of the 20th century, which is a tribute to show just how profoundly she shaped modern culture. In the end, Coco Chanel's life journey from the impoverished orphan to reigning queen of couture is as dramatic and inspiring as any fairy tale. She overcame being abandoned, male chauvinism, and even the ups and downs of fortune and war. She once said, "Where you start doesn't matter. It's what you do next that counts." Her own story proves exactly that. Coco Chanel started with nothing, and through talent, ambition, and fearless innovation, she created a life of significance. Her legacy reminds us that vision and courage can spark a revolution in fashion and in one's own destiny. So, believe in your vision. Work endlessly on it, and never let anyone tell you that a poor person can't triumph. Coco Chanel did, and the world will never forget her for it. Now let's learn the incredible story of Sara Blakely. Sara Blakely went from earning $200 as a waitress, selling fax machines door to door, and starting Spanx with just $5,000 to building a company valued at $1.2 billion, making her one of the top self-made female billionaires. Sara Blakely grew up in Clearwater, Florida, with big dreams of becoming a successful entrepreneur and making a difference in the world. She wanted to create something different that would help people feel better about themselves. Her father, an entrepreneur, always told her the key to success is failing as many times as you can. This idea of embracing failure and learning from it stayed with Sara as she pursued her goals. After college, Sara worked as a waitress, earning just $200 a week. Later, she sold fax machines door to door, but she didn't give up on her bigger dream. In 2000, frustrated by the uncomfortable undergarments on the market, she decided to create something better, something that would make women feel confident and comfortable. With just $5,000 in savings, she started Spanx. Sara faced rejection after rejection, but she never gave up. People told her that it was impossible, that she would never make it. Manufacturers told her, "This is a small market, you'll never compete with the big brands." But Sara didn't listen. Instead of giving up, she decided to teach herself everything she could. She learned about patents, she researched fabric materials, and she spent hours on the phone with manufacturers until she found one willing to take a chance on her idea. She even created her own prototype and pitched it to retailers herself. Her big break came when she convinced a buyer at Neiman Marcus, a high-end department store known for featuring luxury brands, to stock Spanx. Sara explained how her product could help women feel more confident and comfortable in their own skin. The product sold out quickly, and soon more and more women wanted to buy it. Today, Spanx is a $1.2 billion brand, and Sara is one of the youngest self-made female billionaires. From $5,000 to a $1.2 billion company, Sara's story proves that no matter how small your start is, with determination and belief in yourself, you can turn your dreams into reality. Embrace failure and redefine it. Sara Blakely's first big dream fell apart. She wanted to be a lawyer, but I basically bombed the LSAT, she said. Then she drove to Orlando to audition as Goofy at Disney World, only to be 2 inches too short for the role. That rejection hit rock bottom for her. And if it wasn't enough, she took a job selling fax machines and got doors slammed in her face every day. Sara remembers, "People would rip up my business card in my face," a typical occurrence. It was brutal. Most people would have given up on big dreams at that point. But Sara had a different relationship with failure thanks to her dad. Growing up, her father would actually high-five her for failing. He'd ask at dinner, What did you fail at this week? If she had nothing, he'd be disappointed. Weird, right? But it taught her that failure isn't about the outcome at all. It's about not trying. She said failure became about not trying, not the outcome. That mindset shift was everything. It gave her permission to take risks and not fear the no. In fact, hearing no became just part of the process. Selling fax machines door to door trained her resilience. You have to hear no so many times before you actually can get to a yes, Sara says. Every rejection was making her stronger and bringing her closer to that eventual yes. So ask yourself, do you let the fear of failure stop you from trying? Sara's story proves that the only real failure is not trying at all. Start embracing those failures as learning reps. Each rejection, each setback is just feedback. It's making you stronger, teaching you something, preparing you for the next move. When you reframe failure this way, you become unstoppable. Sara often says this lesson from her dad was a real gift, and it's one you can give yourself too. So the next time something doesn't work out, don't shrink back, celebrate the attempt, learn the lesson, and say, next, I'm one step closer to my yes. Start small, solve a real problem. At 27, stuck selling office equipment, Sara had no background in fashion or business, but she did have an annoying problem. She hated how her pantyhose looked under white pants. One sweltering Florida day, getting dressed for a party, she grabbed scissors and cut the feet off her pantyhose. Suddenly, no seamed toes showing, no underwear lines. Problem solved. That little DIY moment was the birth of Spanx. It seems simple, but think about it. Sara found a billion-dollar idea by fixing something in her own life. And here's the crazy part. Sara actually wrote down this destiny before it happened. 2 years earlier, after a rough day of cold calls, she scribbled in her journal, I'm going to invent a product that I can sell to millions of people that will make them feel good. She had no clue what that product would be, but she set the intention. Talk about thinking big while starting small. She kept selling fax machines for those 2 years, patiently waiting for the idea to strike. And when it did, when she saw her cut up pantyhose actually worked, she recognized it instantly as the opportunity she'd been waiting for. As she later put it, I ended up writing that goal, and because I had set that intention, I immediately recognized the opportunity. She didn't hesitate. She literally pulled off to the side of the road and said, this is it. This is the idea that I asked for. What can you learn here? First, ideas are everywhere, especially in the everyday annoyances that you face. Sara's genius wasn't some fancy degree. It was noticing a problem that millions of women had and creating a scrappy solution. She started Spanx with just $5,000 in savings and a single prototype. No investors, no office, no experience. And as she says, I didn't know the first thing about the pantyhose industry. I had never taken a business class. But sometimes not knowing the rules is an advantage. She didn't know what wasn't possible, so she tried what others hadn't. You don't need millions of dollars or a PhD to start. You can start small. Test your idea with whatever you have. Sara solved a real problem for herself, and it turned out millions of others wanted that solution too. So pay attention to frustrations, yours and other people's. Is there a solution that you can create? It might not make you a billionaire overnight, but it could be a great business idea. Spanx began in an apartment with one homemade prototype. As Sara put it later, she had a vision of changing the way women feel about themselves, even though she was starting tiny. Dream big, but start with that first step. Don't wait for perfect. Solve a problem that you understand deeply, and you'll be onto something. Be persistent through the no's. So you have a great idea. Now what? For Sara, the answer was hustle. She had her makeshift prototype and a ton of passion. But remember, no one in the industry took her seriously. Imagine this. 27-year-old Sara drives to North Carolina alone to visit hosiery mills because that's where pantyhose were made. She starts cold calling factory owners. Hi, I'm Sara Blakely, and I have an idea for footless pantyhose. You can guess how that went. Every single factory slammed the door on her. They were all run by older men who didn't get it. Sara says they kept asking, and you're with who? And you're backed by who? She answered, Sara Blakely and Sara Blakely. They showed her the door. She got rejected by every manufacturer for weeks. Here's where most people quit. But Sara kept showing up. She took time off her day job, drove from plant to plant with her lucky red backpack, and refused to let the no's crush her spirit. Finally, 2 weeks after returning home defeated, she got a phone call. One mill owner had mentioned Sara's idea to his daughters at dinner. His teenage daughters told him, Dad, this idea is genius. Help that girl. He changed his mind and agreed to manufacture Spanx. Her persistence paid off. It only happened because she knocked on every door and didn't quit when it looked bleak. Even after she had a product, more rejection awaited. Sara needed to get Spanx into stores. She managed to get a meeting with a buyer at Neiman Marcus, a big luxury department store. Now, Sara is a born saleswoman. She knew she had to do something dramatic to stand out. In the middle of the meeting, she could tell she was losing the buyer's attention. So she literally took the woman to the ladies' restroom, changed into her Spanx undergarment right there, and modeled the product under white pants. The buyer could see how well it worked and say, yes, we'll try it. That's how Spanx first got on shelves. One store, Neiman Marcus, in 7 locations. After that, Bloomingdale's, Saks, and other stores followed suit. But the big break almost every entrepreneur dreams of came in 2000. Oprah Winfrey discovered Spanx and loved it. Oprah put Spanx on her famous favorite things list. Sales exploded. Sara said that being chosen by Oprah was an awesome, validating moment. In fact, Spanx did $4 million in sales in its first year and hit $10 million the next year. Sara could barely keep up with demand and finally quit her day job selling fax machines. All those no's turned into one huge yes, and it only happened because Sara refused to give up. The lesson? Persistence is everything. Every entrepreneur hears no. Maybe you're hearing a lot of them right now. Investors not interested, customers not buying yet. Remember Sara. She heard hundreds of no's, from managers to manufacturers to buyers. She just kept going to the next door, the next phone call, the next tactic. Use rejection as your fuel. Each no is data. It means try another angle, improve your pitch, or knock on a different door. Sara likes to say, every no is one step closer to a yes. It's not just a comforting quote. She lived it, and so can you. Be relentless. If you believe in your idea, keep pitching it until someone gives you a chance. The road to success is paved with rejections, but every rejection is also a stepping stone to that life-changing yes. Believe in your idea, even if others don't. One of the most powerful parts of Sara's story is how much she trusted her own gut, even when she had zero credentials in the field. She didn't run around seeking for other people's approval or permission. In fact, Sara kept her billion-dollar idea secret for a whole year while she developed it. Why? She later explained that she didn't want other people's doubts or negativity to cloud her vision in the vulnerable early stages. This is such a smart move. Sometimes your well-meaning friends or colleagues will say, "Are you sure? Sounds too risky." And they inadvertently talk you out of a great idea. Sara avoided that trap by believing in herself first. She sought feedback selectively once she had a prototype and momentum, not at the daydream stage. It also helped that Sara approached business with fresh eyes. Yes, she had no experience in fashion or retail or manufacturing, but she saw that as a plus. She said, what you don't know can become your greatest asset if you let it. Because she wasn't an insider, she came up with a product that all the insiders had missed. The industry veterans weren't trying to reinvent pantyhose. They thought they knew it all. Sara, not knowing what couldn't be done, went ahead and did it differently. For example, she insisted on a totally unique packaging for Spanx, bright red, bold, and fun, and positioned it in stores next to shoes instead of the lingerie section. The established companies thought she was crazy. It turned out to be a brilliant way to reach women who didn't even know they needed her product yet. Sometimes, not having prior experience means you're not biased by the way things are supposed to be. Sara encourages entrepreneurs to use their inexperience as a competitive advantage. Rather than thinking, I'm not qualified, who am I to do this? Flip it. Because you're new, you can approach problems with a fresh perspective and boldness that seasoned folks might lack. Your belief in your idea has to be unshakable, especially in the beginning. When every expert told Sara, no one will buy footless pantyhose, she trusted the feedback that did matter, her own experience. She wanted the product and the reactions of real women that she talked to. In Spanx's early days, she personally went to stores doing demonstrations and asked customers for their input. She stayed close to the product and the people it served, not the naysayers. So if you have an idea burning inside you, protect it from premature negativity. Nurture it. Do your homework like Sara did. She spent 2 years patenting and prototyping in the evenings. But don't let a lack of credentials stop you. As Sara's story shows, innovation often comes from outsiders. Believe that you might see what everyone else missed. And remember her advice. What you don't know can be your biggest asset. Keep that beginner's mind and trust your gut. Build a mindset for growth. Building a billion-dollar company isn't just about what you do, it's about how you think. Sara Blakely is a huge believer that mindset and attitude are the X factors in entrepreneurship. Long before Spanx made it big, she was already training her mind for success. How? By feeding it daily with positivity, knowledge, and vision. When she was trudging door to door in that sales job, getting rejected left and right, Sara did something that I absolutely love. She turned her car into a mobile classroom of motivation. She says, I used to play Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy tapes on repeat in my car in high school and college. No one ever wanted to ride home with me. While other people were cranking music, Sara was literally reprogramming her brain with optimism and resilience. Those mentors from afar kept her spirits up for the next cold call. If she got kicked out of an office, she'd get back in her car and listen to something empowering to get into the right mindset for the next one. This habit was crucial. It meant that even though she was alone in a tough job, she wasn't really alone. She had virtual mentors coaching her every day. Sara also constantly pushed herself out of her comfort zone. Did you know she even did stand-up comedy at night during her fax selling years? She admits it terrified her, and that's exactly why she did it. She was training herself to do hard things and face fear head on. Little habits like that build tremendous confidence. So by the time she started Spanx, she'd already walked on metaphorical hot coals. In fact, Sara later attended seminars like Tony Robbins, where she literally walked on coals and dug into personal development. All of that work on herself created a mindset where she expected success and wasn't afraid of challenges. So think about your own mindset and habits. Are you surrounding yourself with positivity and growth like Sara did, or are you letting fear and doubt run the show? Here's a huge insight from Sara. She says you must connect to a purpose bigger than yourself. In a recent event with Tony Robbins, Sara got emotional talking about the power of knowing your why. She said when you know why you're doing something, when it serves others or fulfills a big mission, you'll find the courage you never knew you had. For her, Spanx was about helping women feel confident. That purpose pulled her through the low points. So find your why. Why does your business or idea matter to you and to the world? When the purpose is clear, the grit comes naturally. Also, celebrate your wins, big and small. Sara talks about how she bought herself a cheap $75 purse to celebrate the first time she saw Spanx on a store shelf. She marked the moment. You better believe that reinforced her motivation to go get the next win. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, so intentionally focusing on progress keeps you in the game. The bottom line is that success is an inside job first. You have to program your mind for resilience, confidence, and optimism daily. Read inspiring books, watch videos, and hey, you're doing it right now. Surround yourself physically or virtually with the people who uplift you. Sara did it with cassette tapes and seminars. You have even more access today with YouTube and podcasts and different online communities. There's no excuse not to flood your brain with the good stuff. This is how you build an environment and habit of greatness, and you're already on the right track. By watching content like this, you're feeding your mind the same way that Sara did. Keep doing that consistently, and you'll develop the mindset muscle to match your hustle. Your turn. Take the leap. Sara Blakely's journey from failed salesperson to billionaire inventor is proof that you don't need to have all the answers to start. You don't need permission. You just need an idea you care about and the courage to keep going. Sara likes to say she lives an entrepreneur life, which to her means with the right mindset, you can live a life much bigger than you ever imagined. I want you to remember that. The next time you get a crazy idea or face a setback, think of Sara. Cutting up pantyhose on her apartment floor, hearing her 100th no, driving around with motivational tapes blasting, chasing a vision no one else could see. That's the spirit of an entrepreneur. It's scrappy, bold, and a little bit weird, and it wins. So what idea are you sitting on? And what are you going to do about it? Maybe it's not fully formed yet. That's okay. Write it down like Sara did. Start somewhere. Make a prototype in your living room. Try selling to one customer. Expect that you'll fail and mess up and hear no a bunch. It's all part of the journey. But also know this. Every time you face a fear or overcome an obstacle, you grow. You become the kind of person who can achieve those crazy big goals. I'm willing to bet that your breakthrough is waiting on the other side of one of those failures that you've been afraid of. So don't be afraid to embarrass yourself a little. Don't be afraid to knock on doors, even if they slam in your face. Every attempt is getting you closer. And hey, look at you here right now, learning, improving, investing in yourself. This is what winners do. I'm proud of you for showing up and feeding your mind with something positive and productive today. Not everyone has the dedication to do that. Every video, every book, every action you take to better yourself and your business is compounding inside you. To watch the incredible story of Melanie Perkins, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there. Melanie Perkins was rejected over 100 times. Investor told her that she wasn't a real tech founder. They told her that Canva would never work, but she refused to listen.